Today, we're not just looking at a topic, we're kind of cracking open a case file. A case that, believe it or not, affects every single society on this planet. The whole phenomenon of crime. So, we're going to put on our sociologist hats and investigate why crime seems to be everywhere, and what that actually tells us about, well, us. Let's start by looking at the evidence.
So, here's our game plan. We're going to tackle this investigation in 5 parts. First, we'll survey the global crime scene. Then, we'll look at how we even gather the evidence in the first place. After that, we'll get into the really interesting stuff, the motives. Then we'll assess the damage, and finally, we'll try to answer the biggest question of all, what's the solution?
All right, first things first. Let's set the scene. Before we can dig into the why, we really need to get a handle on the what and the where. And you'll see pretty quickly, the scale of this thing is, well, it's global.
I want you to just pause and think about this for a second. Seriously, can you think of a single society, any place on Earth, that is just completely 100% free from crime?
Yeah, the answer is a pretty clear and simple no. Crime is what we call ubiquitous. It's just everywhere. It's a basic, inescapable fact of human society, no matter where you lurk.
Now, what's fascinating is that even with all our different cultures, our investigation turns up some universal clues. Every single country has some form of police, courts, and prisons. And all around the world, adult men make up the biggest group of criminal suspects. Oh, and here's the big one. Even though the news might make you think otherwise, simple theft is, by far, the most common crime. Violent crime, statistically, is actually a pretty rare event.
Okay, so if crime is everywhere, how do we actually know that? How do we gather solid evidence? This is where our investigation gets a little bit messy, because measuring crime isn't as simple as just, counting bad things that happen. We basically have 2 main tools in our kit. On one hand, you've got official statistics. Think of these as the crimes that are officially reported to the police. But on the other hand, you have something called victimization surveys. And these are different. They go out and ask people directly, hey, have you been a victim of a crime? Whether you told the cops or not. And right there, you see the problem. One tool measures what's on the books, the other tries to peer into a hidden reality.
And that hidden reality, it has this kind of dramatic name, the dark figure of crime. You could say this is the biggest mystery for any sociologist studying crime. It's all the criminal stuff that never, ever makes it into the official records because, well, no one reported it or no one ever found out about it. And just look at the difference here. This is exactly why those surveys are so important. They give us a peek into that dark figure, and they show us that the real amount of crime is so much bigger than the official numbers would have us believe. So the big takeaway here is that what we think we know about crime is often just the tip of a very, very large iceberg.
Okay, now that we have a better handle on the evidence and its limits, our investigation can finally turn to the why. What are the motives? This is where sociologists kind of become criminal profilers, using different theories to figure out what pushes people to break the rules.
So our first big theory comes from a guy named Robert Merton. His anomie theory basically says that society itself can sometimes create the perfect storm for crime. Think about it. Society tells us all to chase these big goals. Get rich, be successful. But then it doesn't give everyone the same shot at the legit ways to get there, like a good job. That gap between the goal and the means, that creates this massive tension or strain. Now, Merton said people deal with this strain in 5 different ways. Most of us just conform. But some people choose innovation. They still want the goal, the money, the success, but they use illegal means to get it. That's a huge pathway to crime. Then you have ritualists, who just give up on the big goals but follow the rules anyway. And retreatists, who just check out of the system altogether. And finally, some people choose rebellion. They try to tear down the whole system and build a new one. But for our investigation, that innovation box is key.
But then, another theory comes along and flips the whole question on its head. Instead of asking, why do people commit crime? Control theory asks, why don't we all do it? And the answer, according to sociologist Travis Hershey, is all about our social bonds. It's our connections to our family and friends, our commitment to our future, our involvement in our community, and our own personal beliefs. These are like invisible strings that keep most of us in line.
So, we've got some pretty powerful theories about motive. Now it's time to assess the damage. Because the true cost of crime, well, it goes way beyond just a single person or a stolen phone. It sends these ripples through our entire society.
When we think about the cost of crime, we usually just think about the stuff that was stolen. But as you can see here, the financial picture is so much bigger. You've got the cost of violence, like hospital bills, money spent on illegal things, the billions all of us spend on preventing crime, like security cameras and locks, and, of course, the insane amount of money it costs to control crime with police and prisons.
And just to put one of those costs into perspective, just one, let's talk about what it takes to control crime after it happens. In the United States alone, the corrections system, that's prisons, parole, all of it, costs over $80 billion every single year. It's just a mind-boggling number, and that's just one slice of the pie.
But the cost isn't just about money, not even close. There's this deep social price we all pay. Take the safety gender gap. All over the world, data consistently shows that women report feeling way less safe than men. And that's not just a feeling. It's a fear that literally changes how people live their lives, it limits freedom, and it represents this huge psychological burden that society has to carry.
And all of this brings us to the final part of our investigation. We've looked at the scope, the evidence, the motives, the staggering costs. So, what's the verdict? How is a society supposed to respond to all this?
Well, right at the heart of our justice system, there's this huge debate. On one side, you have rehabilitation. The goal here is to change the offender, to get at the root causes we talked about, that social strain, those broken bonds, and hopefully reform them. But on the other side, you have incapacitation. This focuses on public safety by simply removing the offender from society through punishment and prison.
And that leads us to our final, really thought-provoking question. What is the whole point of justice anyway? Is it just about punishing people for what they did in the past? Or could it be something else, something more focused on repairing the future? This idea, sometimes called restorative justice, it challenges us to think not just about the person who committed a crime, but about how to rebuild the connections between the victim, the offender, and the entire community. It's a question that really forces us to decide what we want our justice system to be.